And welcome to this episode of Season 5 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and often guests, as we have today, talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late and much missed John Popham. So, as usual, we start with the weather. Sweyn, how are you? Where are you? And how's the weather been this week where you are?
I'm fine, thank you. The weather today is horrible. It's raining, it's grey, it's windy, but that's fairly normal for this time of year in Orkney. So there we are.
Okay. And Aude Charillon, our guest for today, where are you and how's the weather been this week where you are?
I'm in Newcastle upon Tyne, and it's actually quite sunny. It's been
Ooh.
dry and really nice. The temperatures are getting a bit warmer, which is not a bad thing either.
Excellent. And here in the west of Ireland, where I am today, it is a grey sky, but there's some light trying to get through. And this week, well, it's been a mixture. Last week there was power outages here, so not so great. Yesterday, there was beautiful blue skies. Unfortunately, I wasn't feeling the best. We didn't get to go out, but the skies were blue, and it was very nice to see that for a change. So great to have you on the show, Aude. We're delighted you could join us today. And we will go through a few dates and events and then we'll come to chat to you. So, Swain, do you want to take it away with the first one?
Sure, the first date this week is called Reclaim Social Media Day, and this is on the 6th of February. And it's an annual social media campaign that encourages individuals and organizations to use their online platforms for positive and meaningful engagement. Um, the campaign is a movement that seeks to counteract negativity, hate speech, and toxicity on social media platforms by promoting kindness, empathy, and constructive communication. It encourages users to take a stand against online harassment and cyberbullying while using their online presence to spread positivity and support social causes. Um, Participants in the campaign use their social media accounts to share uplifting messages, stories of resilience, and acts of kindness, and by doing so, they aim to create a more inclusive and compassionate online environment. It was launched as a response to growing concerns about the negative aspects of social media, including online harassment and the spread of hate speech. And the campaign's goal is to remind people that social media has the potential to be a force for good and a platform for positive change. Uh, and I think this is more important than ever at the moment, and it's something that John Popham, our founder of this program, was very keen on. So that's
Absolutely.
the
Yes,
first.
needed more than ever as people migrate from X to blue sky and other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, essential.
So the second date that I have is called uh, Time to Talk Day. And again, I think John would have liked this one. It's an initiative focused on encouraging open conversations about mental health, and it aims to reduce stigma surrounding mental health issues and promote understanding and empathy. It's an opportunity for everyone to come together and have honest conversations about mental well-being. And the day is dedicated to breaking the silence around mental health, and provides a platform for people to share their experiences, provide support, and raise awareness about mental health challenges. And by talking openly, the hope is to reduce the stigma and discrimination that often surrounds mental health issues. So those are the dates.
Excellent. Yes, I think John would have approved of those. Yeah, good to see us flagging up what he cared about and what we cared about as well. So that's great. Okay, and we've picked up some events as well. We do aim for events that we think will entertain and educate people, I suppose, on this channel. So if you're watching us on YouTube, please know that we've sourced these mostly from Eventbrite usually, and we hope they bring some interest and information to people. Yeah, so hopefully we will help people along the way. So today, Monday, the 3rd of February, from 6:30 to 8:30, a new series that we haven't known about before called the Unlearn Bullshit series. Hopefully that doesn't offend people too much with that word. And this one's about artificial intelligence. And the blurb from the page says there's a whole lot of bullshit we need to unlearn if we're going to fulfill our human potential. This year, College of Modern Anxiety, which I didn't know about before, is launching a new series at Mayday Rooms in London that they're calling Unlearn Bullshit. Each month, they'll expose some different bullshit, I keep saying that word, delving into some of the most powerful critical ideas from the last 100 years of philosophy and using Coma's play shop techniques, games, to identify and root out bullshit's influence on our thinking and behaviors. The series will start with a session on artificial, in brackets, intelligence that will look at what thinking is and why we've got so unused to it that we let big tech convince us that machines are thinking. And this session will look at the difference between problem solving and other kinds of thinking, why machines are incapable of thinking, and show that the only reason tech companies have been able to fool us into believing they can make machines think is that we've already been trained to think like machines ourselves. So, Sweyn, what do you think? Do you think that one has potential for being
I love that one.
Mm.
I love the idea behind the series, and I think that's a great topic. It's on in London. It's not an online event, unfortunately, so I hope everybody who goes to that will get something out of it. I think it'll be brilliant.
Maybe we can get somebody from that session to come and talk to us about it.
Yes.
We do talk about AI on this program, of course, because we do try and keep up with what's going on. But we would also subscribe to the thing about not letting big tech convince us that machines are thinking, that we still do our thinking for ourselves. So critical thinking is vital, more than ever again as well. Okay, moving on. On Thursday, there's an event called Beyond the Algorithm, Creative Agency in the Age of AI. And this is a hands-on workshop again with the DISC visiting fellow, Dr. Natalia Laba, University of Groningen, assistant professor in digital and multimodal communication and humane AI. And the question they're asking is, can generative AI be creative, or is it merely a copy machine that recycles stolen data it has been trained on? This is their words, not ours, so please bear that in mind. Adopting a usage-oriented perspective, this workshop invites a critical reflection on the disruptive impact of visual generative media on creative industries and professional practices. It does so by foregrounding the question of human AI agency distribution, highlighting the unresolved tension between innovation and imitation inherent in visual generative media. It's a three-part structure with firstly a lightning talk inviting participants to consider perspectives of artists and professional designers, both those in favor of Gen AI and those against it. The second part is participants reflecting on current and potential applications of Gen AI in their own practice to unpack four visions in relation to Gen AI integration. AI is a tool, AI is a threat, AI training seen as similar to inspiration and learning, and AI training seen as akin to data laundering. Additional perspectives are expected to emerge from this discussion, I'm sure they will. And in the last section, participants will collectively construct and negotiate the conditions for the ethical integration of AI into networked image cultures and society at large. Again, I thought interesting, might stimulate some more conversation. I think the bit about whether AI is data laundering, is a topic I've heard of before elsewhere as well. So yeah, interesting to see what comes out of that.
No, it's a good one as well. Yes.
And finally, with a tip of the hat to the fact we have a person trained as a librarian like myself, as our special guest today, a session in Sheffield on Towards Digital Collections training team also on Thursday from 10:30 to 3:30. And these materials are designed largely for people working in galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, but they may have some relevance for people working in other sectors, notably on research projects with digital cultural heritage. And there is a short video. Sweyn, I wonder if we could view the video.
Yes, indeed.
Great.
Introducing new training and learning opportunities for galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. Launching this November, Towards Digital Collections is an online course created for GLAM professionals at every stage of their digital collections journey. 7 modules, over 60 training steps, packed with written guides, worksheets, and real-world examples from institutions across the UK and beyond. From digitisation techniques to data management and workflow, Towards Digital Collections offers insight and practical tools for building and maintaining digital collections. Open to all and accessible anytime. for those beginning or continuing their digital journey. Towards digital collections can help make a lasting impact.
Great. I thought that was interesting for the general public as well as for possibly from professionals in the field. Aude, I don't know whether you've seen that mentioned anywhere.
No, I haven't.
No.
I'm afraid, but I think it's a recurrent theme.
Is it?
Yeah, and
Okay.
like any type of organization with special collections that are only, it's about how you make those collections accessible to people. And as we've just discussed with events happening only in person, like you need some of that to be online as well. So I think a lot of professionals in those sectors are keen to make that happen. So it's good to see even more courses.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so let's do a formal introduction of you, Aude. Thanks for joining us today. Aude grew up and studied in France and then moved to the UK in 2008. Fresh from completing her library degree, she started working in the public libraries of Newcastle upon Tyne. She held various roles there, including being the librarian for the Business and Intellectual Property Centre. She's especially proud of having started the publication of some Newcastle Libraries datasets as open data and of her work with the Carnegie UK Trust on privacy skills for library staff. She hasn't said this in her bio, but she's also was named Public Librarian of the Year 2017 by the CILIP Public and Mobile Libraries Group for her work on library open data and achieved CILIP Fellowship in 2021. Since 2021, she works for PTFS Europe, a small UK-based company supporting library teams with open source library systems. And in this job, she particularly enjoys helping out library staff in diverse libraries and participating in the system's open source communities. Outside of work, she can be found playing board games or hiking. Aude, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. My screen flickered a bit there. Thanks for joining us. Aude, you and I have known each other for many years, probably principally to the, I suppose, open data and combination of open data libraries was an attraction for both of us, I think, since they're areas we're both interested in. So can you tell us a bit about your early career in libraries and then what brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I freshly graduating, I was in Newcastle. I arrived in England actually for an exchange program at the university. So I did my placement with Newcastle Libraries while still studying, and then I got a job there. So I started as a library assistant. So even though I had the degree and I had a lot of knowledge and ideas, I really saw the kind of the, like, I guess the face of a service that most citizens see when they think about the public libraries, the people you speak to when you walk in. So that's the kind of job I was doing. And I was really fascinated by the fact UK public libraries seems to have a big emphasis on information, whereas I would say French public libraries are a bigger emphasis on culture. And for me, the big difference is the fact we were promoting that you could walk into a library and ask a question, and the member of staff would do their best to help you find the answer. They weren't an expert in that topic. They would just use their skills to actually either find the answer or refer you to a resource or an organization that would help you find that. And I think that's kind of something that followed through my career, but how do we make information accessible to citizens and not just any type of information? So but authoritative results, what's facts, and we can talk about misinformation as well. So it's like the accurate information and also citizens having the help and the skills to get to that information. So I was lucky to be able to then work also with a business and IP center, and I learned a lot about copyright. And I think that's really important for people to also understand the information they can access. Under what conditions can they access it and what can they do with it afterwards? So I started looking into open licenses, and that's what brought me to the open data and thinking about it for the library. But we are used to make our collections accessible. So most people think libraries equals borrowing books, but there are a lot of information we hold, and we are only really the guardians of that information. So how do we make more of that information accessible to more people? And it was, the open data thing was really looking at the library not just as that steward of data, but that almost a producer of data. So as an organization, we create data about how our processes, and in this case, a lot of it is going to be through library management system. So how many members are registered with the library, what items do we loan? So all that kind of thing, we felt with my team that it wasn't up to us to keep it. It was also possibly of public interest, and therefore we should make that information also available to the citizens we serve. So we started publishing, so it's still basic information. We're starting publishing that sort of thing under an open license, because again, it's about making accessible, so making sure people can reuse it without any barriers, without having to ask us for permission. The open license is really there to say, yes, you can do anything you like, and the only thing you have to do is say it originally came from Newcastle Libraries. So. And we tried, so that's how I met you, Pauline, working with also colleagues across England. We organized events about how other public libraries could also make that happen, and like started conversations across the sector. So there are other initiatives now, it's picking up again for public libraries in England through Arts Council England, especially, but it really opened a lot of different conversations, and for me it put the focus on librarian skills to actually pull that data out of their system. So it's not everybody knows SQL, not everybody has access to their database on their library management system. It depends what system people are using and what skills they have. And that's also brought me to working with PTFS Europe, because their software they support Koha, the library management system. It's the one we had in Newcastle Libraries. We still have it. And it is the one where you can, as a librarian, you really have that access to all your own data, and learning those skills, you can then like get a lot out of that. So now in my current role, I am actually teaching librarians about SQL and about using Koha, obviously using Koha to help them in their role and make the most of it for their library. But I'd have a special affection for the reporting sessions, because it brings them back to, look, it's your data, like it's up to you to manage it. So I know you mentioned privacy earlier, so it's up to you to manage it. Also means it's up to you to make sure you delete it, not keep it too long when it's personal data. So having those conversations with all different types of libraries is really what I find really interesting in this job now.
And do the library staff have to have very technical skills, or can anybody nearly learn how to use the technology that you're supporting them with?
So there are easier ways. So they're either through Koha or through other tools. We also support an analytics system called Metabase, and it's got an easy create your question way, but it depends how specific the question you want to answer is. I'm sure you find that as well. There's often going to come a point where if you exactly want to answer that, you are going to have to create that question for yourself. So basic understanding of SQL is required, and then the more specific or the more complex the question, then the more SQL skills you will need. And it really depends on the person. Some people's minds work in different ways, and some people grasp the SQL logic quicker than others. I kind of learned, obviously, when we got the software at the library, but I guess the more you practice, the easier it is, kind of thing.
And how would you, to somebody who wasn't familiar with even the acronym SQL, how would you explain it to them, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a language that allows you to query your database, and it just means it has, you basically say, so use certain word to do certain things. So it's like a programming language. So you say, okay, I want to see this field as a column in my table of results, and I want these conditions to be applied to the results. So you already filter out the things you don't want or the things you want. So it's just when I'm talking about the SQL query, it's just a structured like way of telling the database, this is what you should show me in my results.
And how many?
The clues in the name, SQL,
Yeah.
structured query language. That's what it is.
Exactly.
Good to know. Good to know. And how many libraries are you working in at the moment, Aude? You know, is it nationwide or?
It goes further than the UK. I struggle with remembering numbers, so I'm not going to be able to tell you. But it depends also if we talk about libraries or organizations. So there's more than 100 if that helps, but I think we are way past 100 by this point. And yeah, so it's mostly in the UK, but with a few libraries also in Europe at the moment.
Okay. And who would your competition be in the field?
I guess it would be other providers of library software solutions. In the UK, there aren't many supporting open source systems. It's interesting actually to see how we work with other organizations supporting the same open source software in other countries, because there is a lot of collaborations with our equivalent in the US or in France or in Canada. So it's how, because it's an open source software, so we all have a say of how this software gets developed. The librarians have a say, and we're all across the world. So yeah, I mentioned the US, Canada, France, but the software started in New Zealand, and there are still developer teams in that region as well, and obviously libraries using it. So it's either we can progress the software in a way that benefits everyone who have different needs across the world and different sectors, and so that it benefits everyone, and all those libraries and support organizations get something out of it.
And is it useful in just public libraries or other special libraries as well?
Yeah, so it's not just public libraries, and actually in the UK, it's most organizations we work with right now are not public libraries. There are a lot of smaller specialist libraries that use it. I'm saying smaller, but maybe they are not that small. Some of them have vast collections. So we're talking museum libraries, even parliament libraries. We're talking specialist colleges or professional organizations which have their own library. So all those organizations also use, our research organization will also use Koha as their system.
It's very refreshing to hear that, and you know that libraries want to use an open source tool, because so many of them, I think I've been persuaded in the past that they need proprietary software. And here they are subscribing to something, and especially in the face of what's happening internationally, I think it's even more challenging than ever. Has PTFS, if you can speak for them, I don't know, but what's your kind of view on what's happening in the US and what we need to be looking out for as people concerned about openness?
I think you might need to be more specific of what you're referring to in the US.
We talked about misinformation and disinformation earlier, and we are very concerned. We've talked about before on this program about making sure that people get accurate and reliable information, and libraries have been a great source for that. But various platforms are changing the way they do things, and we'd be concerned that we direct people towards the reliable and accurate information still. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I think the main thing with open source is because it's open source, it means the code is public and everybody can check what it does, which you don't get, as you say, with all the, like if we're talking social media platforms and how their algorithms work, that's all a bit murky because that's something they do not want people to know about. So at least if you're using a library catalog, for example, that is underpinned by open source software, you can get someone a bit more technical probably than most of us to tell you, yes, that's exactly how the search works, and that's why you see those results when you search for this. And that's really important to know, like for citizens, where those results come from and why you see at the top, like which ones are promoted to the top, I guess. So I wouldn't say, yeah, I think it's more a society issue of we need to understand where that information comes from. I mean, we could talk about how we're supposed to use Wikipedia, for example. We could talk we could talk about AI in search engines as well. It's the same thing of yes, the tools are changing, but the skills we all need as citizens to assess that information and know how to use it, they're still needed.
Yeah,
they might be slightly different. They're evolving slightly. So like I know when I use a Wikipedia article, if I'm going to actually use that as the absolute answer, I will check where that paragraph is coming from. I will check the sources at the bottom. Actually, is this article something I can rely on? Is it what we called an authoritative source? Like, how serious are they? Who do they work for? Who do they get money from? Do they have an agenda? All that sort of thing. And with AI being used in search engine, I was pleasantly surprised to see it usually it quotes where it got like that answer it gives you from, so you can also check, no, it's not coming from nowhere, it's coming from NASA, so I can I can actually trust that answer.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a preference for certain AIs over others? What's your kind of in your daily or weekly list of things you use?
I have been avoiding AI personally so far. I have been checking what was going on, but yes, I think it has a lot of interesting uses, like because yes, it can do things quicker than our poor brains would. So yes, sometimes I do not want to have to look for a full page of results on a search engine before getting the answer. I guess I haven't used it so much because I just I don't like the whole business model that's behind it, and that's why I've avoided using it, so I couldn't answer your question.
Okay.
I think I will start using it also in terms of its summarizing capabilities. I find it really, like, I feel like I'm a bit behind with catching up with library news because there are a lot of really good information in very long reports that I don't have time to read. It's great to think there's an AI who can summarize it for me. And I think that was a point that was raised in one of the events you advertised. Like, it's also the fear of how do I make sure the summary is going to put the interesting points that I would have found interesting and like, am I letting the AI think for me by telling me these are the interesting points rather than me reading it and thinking, oh no, these are the main main results.
Yeah. Well, I've used ChatGPT at work for I think the first actual document I produced was the risk assessment, because that was easy enough to find, and I would know whether it was reliable or not. And also in a network that I run for community organizations, we have a standing item on AI because we know it's happening and we want people to be up to date with what other people are doing. But the main thing we got from a meeting recently was the need to develop policy. If people have a policy, that will help to guide them, when not sure what to do, because people are going to use it anyway. There's no point in an organization saying, don't use AI. We've told our staff not to use AI. They're going to use it and they're not going to tell you about it. But if you have a policy, at least they know that there's some guidance there that you should be paying attention to. Sweyn, I don't know what your use of AI. Have you used it much in your recently?
Very limited.
Mm,
I've mainly just investigated how it works, and as Aude says, try to keep up to date with what's going on.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel a bit ambivalent about the whole thing. I mean, it's inevitable, I think. I'm quite often feel ambivalent about new technologies.
Do you want to just share
Um,
with Aude what your previous is in around IT, so she knows where you're coming from?
oh yes, I most of my career was in local government IT, and yeah, a heavy emphasis on security and on data protection and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, all the things that were brought up as issues with AI in the events that we highlighted and what you said, Aude, I think they're very important to get to grips with. And I think same as when social media was new, same as when fax machines were new. I'm old enough to remember that. Um, it's just a question of having a policy, as you say, Pauline, about work, based on risk and opportunity and benefit, and trying to take it from there. But personally, I haven't had the impetus to actually try it out in any particularly useful way yet.
I'm surprised with the course that you're doing that they hasn't been something that you would have found useful.
I think it's just all happened too early to be quite
Mm,
filtering through there.
mm,
I think there are um, there are signs that things like assessments are being trying to be designed so that you can't simply do them as an AI input.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I think all academic
I
institutions
think
are
in
faced with
academia
that.
and in schools and learning situations, I think they really are wrestling with what it all means still,
Mm,
and
mm,
how to cope with the knowledge that students will by now and increasingly kind of resort to getting AI first drafts at the very least.
mm. Yeah. Can you just say briefly what your courses that you're studying so that
I'm
we're remind us?
studying a part-time MSc in renewable energy at Heriot Watt,
Mhm.
which has a campus based here in Orkney, so that's lucky.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you had in your bio and kind of elsewhere, Aude, was about media literacy or digital literacy. Is that still something that you're invested in now, and what kind of guidance are you giving to people?
It's still something I'm interested in, and fortunately, it's not something I'm active in anymore. I think that's probably where I miss working in a public library, where you could actually organize events and like training sessions directly for citizens. And but yeah, I think we've just demonstrated talking about AI that like those skills are still still relevant, and it's it's also the question in the UK of who should teach those skills, and who needs a refresher and where we are going to get it from. So not everyone will be able to go to London for an event, or not everyone will be able to hear about those events. So like, yeah, how early should children be taught? So does that mean it's up to schools, or is it up to parents? But where do parents get it from? So it's like, how do we as a society make sure we are prepared for all this AI being launched without really any legal framework? Therefore, it's more the informal things that need to be put in place to help citizens navigate it.
And who would you suggest is responsible for it?
Am I expected to say librarians?
Yes. Well,
I think
as
it
part of the
depends.
team anyway.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, it's library staff's role to help people with information. I think that's definitely the definition of our role as office may define it differently, but for me it's that access to information and therefore how you access it, having the skills to access it. But I don't think librarians are the sole people responsible for that.
No.
And to me, yes, like when we talk about young people learning, that learning happens in schools and at home. So the role of the parents and the school environment is really important.
I think libraries were very early to see the opportunities and the responsibility to provide access to digital stuff long before it was called digital stuff.
Mm.
I remember it might even have been as long ago as about 2002, 2003, where there was a UK-wide initiative called the People's Network,
Yes.
and
Mm.
that was a library. That was all based on libraries. The funding for that was all coordinated through the Public Library Service, and there was a kind of minimum standard set for each public library to provide a certain number of workstations, a certain capacity of broadband, printing facilities, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's libraries have been involved really since the beginning of widespread internet access, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, those are the places, certainly in the UK, that where they still exist, and too many closed, but they are the places where the lights are on, there's staff there already, there's possibly even a means of getting coffee or whatever, they are the place that will be open and will have the skills there, as you say, or the skills remain very much the same, even though the technologies change. And I think it is important that there is a place that people can go once they've left school, because I think you're right. While still at school, I suppose your main source of information and training about this sort of thing will be the school, for better or worse, and that's a whole other kind of domain. But I think because these things change so quickly, and so I mean, there was no such thing as artificial intelligence or cloud-based computing or whatever in 2001 when all this started
Mm.
off in libraries. So yeah, I think libraries need to be supported and funded to do this, and I think it's really important that it's something that we say all the time, and everybody we have on agrees with it. Otherwise, we don't like them. But but to say that a library is more than a place where you can go and hand back the book that you've just read and get another one.
Yeah.
It needs the library is the staff more than the physical collections these days, because with the staff and with an internet connection, you can get access to lots and lots of useful information and make it available to people in ways that was only available in the printed format before 2001, let's say. So yeah, I think it's the staff and the skills and the kind of honest broker role that I think is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
The custodian, not custodian, there used to be a phrase for this, the mediated access to stuff.
Yes, I think
Yes,
mediated
very
is-
much. Yeah, yeah. And it was interesting in 2023, the Ipsos Mori veracity scale had librarians as the third most trusted people in the country third most trusted people behind nurses and airline pilots. So I mean, I've talked about that very proudly. Unfortunately, they weren't in the 2024 index, but recent enough that librarians, I think people just forget about them. Even at
Yeah.
Open Data Camp recently, but the last one was no, it wasn't Open Data Camp, Local Gov Camp. No, not even that. UK Gov Camp. I'll get to it eventually. We got to on conferences. As we mentioned earlier, the librarian for Parliament, House of Lords, actually was at the event. And several people that you would think in the room were knowledgeable, well-informed people at a high level in their organizations did not know that the House of Lords had a librarian. I don't know if they even knew it had a library. I mean, how on earth can our constitutional organizations function without librarianship? I don't know, but people don't know what they should know about librarianship, and yeah, so that's a bit of my high horse, but yeah.
No, I agree, and maybe I felt like when you ask a question of and I said, should it be librarians with responsibility for that? Is yes, obviously, but I feel like for me it's so obvious, so maybe I am part of the problem of maybe librarians not being visible enough, because it's so obvious that maybe I don't say it enough. And all that Sweyn just said, very rightly, about the library staff being an important part of the library, and that service in it as it is wouldn't exist without them. I think that updating or reminding people that the libraries isn't about the collection. It's about the people, both the people who work there and the people who visit them.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's something that I guess we all need to work on, us who support libraries and their wider
Yeah.
mission.
I mean, marketing of libraries has never been done properly, really, in this country, and it's ironic, really, because it's needed more than ever but people don't know, and people need to know because the information is so important. In other countries, I did a study on this for my data journalism course at BCU in 2018-19. And in other countries, China, for example, they're opening more libraries, not closing them down like they are in the UK. In Ireland, there's a national library strategy, so that you could borrow a book in one part of the country and return it in another part of the country. So it's a one library system. The whole service is the whole countrywide, which you probably couldn't manage in the UK because it's so big, but for individual nations, you probably could if you had a mind to. But yeah, I do think it's under misunderstood, really. And also maybe, let's be controversial here. It's a threat to capitalism because it's a free service, providing information, accurate on, kind of, and that any information a librarian, is kind of, bound by our kind of professional training to get the information for you, whether or not they agree with the information. You can get a copy of Mein Kampf in a library. You can get a copy of any controversial publication, unless like local people have decided to project against them, and there's more of that happening as well. But you can get what you need in a library, information without prejudice. That's what we're meant. That's what we're meant to deliver: a service without prejudice. And that could threaten the prevailing systems.
I
I'm a
think
compulsive Googler, or more correctly, I should say, online searcher. And I've just found a reference on the People's Network. Actually, the project was conceived in 1997 and was completed by 2002. So that really does make me feel old now.
Yeah.
But that was way before. I mean, to have that project defined in 1997, that was way before hardly anyone had anything resembling internet access, and certainly nobody would have broadband at home for another 5 or 6 years at least. So yeah, it really was a forward thinking, and it's typical of libraries, because you said that you worked in a business and intellectual property library unit. I mean, that is a service aimed at businesses. So it's not even just or businesses are the business part of individuals' lives, I guess. It's not even that libraries just can provide services to individuals in terms of digital inclusion, but there are services there as well of commercial value.
Very much. Yeah.
Yes, I talked a lot about citizens in general, but there are a lot of services aimed at different groups in population. I would just go back to what you said, Pauline, about you can get anything in a library, and I disagree with that.
Okay.
I think a lot of public libraries will avoid materials that promote hate. So I would say there is some bias, there are some unconscious bias as well in how library collections are built, and we can talk about that. But I think there is some conscious bias as well. So all those controversial materials of, yes, libraries, most big public libraries will have a copy of Mein Kampf and you can request it. Usually it won't be in public access.
Yeah,
and usually it will
enough,
be there more for research. And there are usually conversations about I think the example would be politicians' books and what they promote through those books. And do you need to have all the spectrum? Or actually, can you make choices based on the fact your library should stay that safe and welcoming environment for everyone, and therefore it should not have material that promotes hate against some groups of citizens?
Yes, very well said. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, I fully accept that. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, we can take that and still encourage people to request, materials, because they can request them anyway, and
yes,
and get guidance from trained library staff.
Mein Kampf and other similar hateful content is at one far end of a spectrum of stuff. but apart, making those exceptions, it's still the case that you can get a wide spectrum of information and perspective and views in the collections of libraries, I guess.
I was looking at reading some, because I'm in some Facebook groups for librarians. It's great to see, because it's great to see the pushback that librarians really have to give sometimes to especially in the US, where libraries, I think, are more governed by local politicians.
Yes.
And there's plenty of right-wing groups who think that people shouldn't have access to certain materials, whatever they are. And I've seen people saying that they've been able to that people who are LGBTQI plus or trans people use libraries more than some other minority groups in the community. And it's great to feel that people who might or do face discrimination in other places find solace and support in libraries. They feel these places that they can be. So it's good. I always want libraries to be places where people who are discriminated against feel that they can find a home and it's safe and warm and comfortable. And that's certainly part of the campaigning that we're doing in Birmingham at the moment to kind of explain to people why it's so important to maintain the library service the way it is now. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with what's been going on, Aude, but at the beginning of or kind of later last year, there was a talk of closing 25 of the city's 35 public libraries, branch libraries, which obviously caused consternation amongst those of us who, kind of really use the library service and understand what it means to people. There has been a very vocal campaign called Birmingham Loves Libraries, which is very, it's got its own website and everything, and it's had some really good materials. And basically, we've tried to explain to the decision makers that firstly the amount that the library service gets from the public purse is so small. The value for money of libraries is amazing. Again, the data shows that. We've done FOIs and everything like that to kind of explain that to people. And we've produced some very useful documentation to explain what libraries do to people, and it's been, I think, well produced. And our latest campaign foray has been to send artifacts, like people have created miniature libraries or miniature documents or miniature knitted items representing libraries to cabinet members in Birmingham City Council, maybe to pull at their heartstrings, maybe to make them kind of prick their consciences, whatever it takes really to get them to pause and reconsider.
Yeah, I think
closing libraries or giving them to community organizations.
It goes along that bigger question of what do we want our society to look like? And there's been big questions about how libraries can support democracy, and that whole the ethos about a safe and welcoming place without discrimination, the supporting access to information, not misinformation. So it's also about that. Is it the will or priority of our governments to actually put money behind making that happening? Because we know there are some problems in society relating to discrimination and hate. And when we see what's happening in the US right now, it's really, really scary. So how can we make sure we have a better cohesion in our society to have less incidents, that people lead better lives, and we have a public space who's kind of is part of its mission to make that happen. So if we want to make it happen, we need to fund it properly.
Yeah, agree. Yes, definitely agree. Aude, we've got a few stories that we want to just pick up on before we finish the show. So let's go to those and see, and feel free to comment on what they're about. So we picked up these over the last few months. Some of them maybe a little bit older, but still relevant. And the first one is Attitudes to Digital Accessibility, the 2024 survey report from, sorry, I'm going all over the place now, from AbilityNet. Let me just get back to my page. And this is, as I say, AbilityNet's 2024 survey of organizational attitudes to digital accessibility and inclusion shows a mixed picture of attitudes toward digital accessibility at a challenging time. And this, their fourth annual survey, was completed by 441 people during August and September 2024 and asked about questions about motivations, barriers, and priorities around digital accessibility, and posed topical questions including what are you doing to get ready for the European Accessibility Act legislation? What challenges and opportunities do you think AI will bring your organization? And if you could wave a magic wand, what would make the biggest difference to digital accessibility at your organization? And the blurb, the AbilityNet colleagues writing say that once again, the results reveal there's still a great deal of work we all need to do to push accessibility and into mainstream business as usual. And the report will help you benchmark your digital accessibility activities against other organizations, gain valuable insights into common issues in inclusion, and give you ideas for improvements you can make. Their 2023 survey showed organizations falling into two camps: accessibility leaders that are seeing the benefits of investing in accessibility, and accessibility laggards who are being left behind. And this year's results, they say, confirm that split is growing. However, they're saying there was some good news on increases in confidence and brand value, but more worryingly, our respondents feel that digital accessibility is a lower priority in 2024 than 2023. In 2023, 10% of respondents said that accessibility is a very high priority. In 2024, none of our respondents said that it's a very high priority. And digital accessibility is a low priority for 19.83% of respondents in 2024, a noticeable increase from 14.4% in 2023. So some worrying numbers there. I don't know if you know, if you're familiar with AbilityNet, but they help people to get online and help disabled people. They were set up originally to help disabled people get online, and now they're they do other groups as well. So yeah, it's a concern.
Yeah. Is it 2021 or 2022 the new compliance for public organization in terms of accessibility? Is it one of those things where there's it's less of a priority because it was a priority 4 years ago and now everybody is forgetting about it?
I think a lot of people do feel that once because of all the activity that happened during COVID and people got devices and people kept data and there's the National Data Bank, etc. People think that's solved, but yeah, it's so there is a certain turnaround of complacence, I think, but at a high level it need not to be complacent, and if AbilityNet is reporting this, then we all need to be concerned with it. Okay, so that's AbilityNet's report, and they go on to say actually that lack of awareness, knowledge, and understanding was the most common reason given why digital accessibility was a lower priority. And over half of respondents said that competing priorities were a significant barrier to accessibility. So yeah, we need to keep an eye on that, and hopefully that doesn't prevail. The next item we have is entitled from charitydigital.org website, and it's called, the title is "What are the causes and impacts of digitalization?" And this article says that digital technologies have advanced more rapidly than any other innovation in our history, and while their impacts can include promoting fairness, peace, and justice, they can also exclude people, fueling inequality. And the article goes on to say, approaching digitalization is in an equitable way is of concern to charities who are driven to improve lives, benefit society, and create a better world. And this article, we explore why digitalization has happened and what it means for people who are experiencing digital exclusion. So I think it goes on, it's quite a long article and gives lots of different elements of digital exclusion or inclusion opportunities. So we'll give a link to that in our notes to the program on YouTube for people to be able to follow up on that. And the last article was a blog post by Martha Lane Fox, who's in the House of Lords, and she was the founder of lastminute.com, etc. She's been active in the tech world for quite a number of years. It's quite well known. And her blog post was entitled "A Piece of the Tech Sector Where the UK Can Continue to Be World Class." And it's about the new incoming government, not so new now, but newish anyway. And she says, "We have a new set of ministers who are taking the opportunity seriously. Whatever your politics, we should appreciate that Peter Kyle wants to stand on stage and showcase his department's work personally. This kind of ministerial leadership matters. It inspires the civil servants who work for him, and it indicates to a wider network that this government is determined to continue to improve the public sector." To give a flavour of what's in beta, he unveiled a gov.uk wallet, a virtual app enabling citizens to access services like digital driving licenses and benefits verification securely and efficiently. This innovation aims to simplify interactions with the government while empowering citizens to control their data. Always good. She says, "I also particularly look forward to the digital inclusion action plan that he described. It is so important to enable the most vulnerable people to use these new services as they're often the ones who benefit the most." And that's exactly the kind of thing we want to hear, especially for someone as influential as Martha. And maybe we'll try and get her on the show at some stage if she has any time. But I don't know if you're familiar with, if you've kind of had an eye on the new government, Aude, and seen what's coming out of them.
Only from the maiden headlines in the media. I haven't closely checked what was happening.
Yeah, but Peter Kyle does seem to be have a commitment to digital inclusion that we haven't seen since Francis Maude, actually, which is very reassuring to see. And in fact, only this morning I saw that DCIT, Department of Science, Information, Innovation and Technology, I knew they'd established a digital inclusion team and they're advertising for posts. So if you're looking for a new job, Aude, and you want to work for government, they are advertising for digital inclusion people, and not just in London. They recognise that people work in the regions as well, and they are recruiting around the country. So it's good to see that happening. Sweyn, had you seen that? Have you got a kind of a watching brief on DCIT? What's happening there?
I think I had noticed that, although living in Scotland, that complicates matters a little bit. Part of the strategy will be applicable to the devolved administrations, as they're called, and part won't. But it can only be a good thing. I mean, I heard Peter Kyle speaking on the radio, and everything he said seems to be going in the right direction. So hopefully he'll get the support he needs to actually make progress.
Yeah, I hope so too. We had Aude, we had Will Callahan and Liz Crew on the program last week from Tech Resort in Eastbourne, and Will also worked for GDS in the past, and so he's familiar with what's going on. And he and I met, and Liz, at the recent charity camp, which is a new conference for charities, run by Harry Harold and DXW, and yeah, we had a session there on digital inclusion, very well attended, and we're hoping for more developments from that. So I think there is, and we talked there actually about the digital inclusion team at DCIT. So it's good to see a specific team with responsibility for this now that might actually make a difference to the kind of things that we talk about on a regular basis. So watch this space. We will hopefully have more people from that sector on the show as this season progresses and into next season. So I think we're coming towards the end of the time, Aude, but thanks again for joining us today. If people want to contact you or your organisation after the show, where's the best place to find you?
Probably on LinkedIn, but I'm fine for my email address also to be used.
There is a link to your LinkedIn profile on the description of this video. So
thank you.
Great.
There we go. That's probably
okay, so thanks again for joining us, and I hope we can keep in touch as things develop throughout the year and years. Yeah, thanks for your insights, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thank you
thanks,
very
everybody.
much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today, everybody, and have a good week. Bye-bye.